this is the update. Again, apologies to those that are watching for the delay between videos, but we finally have a sort of semi-rolling chassis with the front suspension now in both sides, the coils in. I've not tightened them up, but some of the brake lines are now installed. These are all new brake lines. The original sort of four-way adapter there, and this is obviously for the brake pedal and the lights, the electrics at the top. We've got this one to go to the master cylinder, which I'll show you in a second. Round to the back, we've got all new leaf springs, all new polyurethane bushings. Bushings under here, you can sort of just make out the sort of purpley bit. Again, rebuilt the brakes, brake cylinders at the back, lines to the back. I've not shown you the brake rebuild, but essentially there's new new pads all the way around. The diff is the same, it's just been sprayed up to make it look a bit prettier. The check strap, I've been looking at some of the documentation on it. You basically need the full body weight of the body on the chassis plus the fuel tank plus the engine in the front, and essentially it needs a couple of 100 kilograms I think to be able to actually get that rubber check strap down there, otherwise it will just tear off if I try to jam it in there. So it's looking good, we're progressing slowly but surely. I've not done anything except for spray the drive shaft up. Battery cables installed. There is another, obviously the brake line to go from the front to the back. I've taken that out just as I rolled it down the driveway so it didn't snag. I will post a separate little video with this one to show people how I did. It's maybe not the most correct way of doing it, but essentially I had problems putting in these springs without the weight of the engine to press everything down, and not being able to find a coil compressor in the super cheap autos and the Repcos and the car stores that basically could compress such a short spring, because it's a shorter spring than usual. I had to actually use shackle bolts and wind them round and just compress everything together, so I'll edit in a video showing you how to do that as well. Quick update just in terms of helping people fitting coil suspension. I've got some new coils in here. Obviously without the weight of the engine or anyone sitting on top of the chassis, when you jack up that A-arm the whole thing just lifts. So what I've come up with as a sort of workaround is two of these, they're not rebar, but two of these sort of fairly chunky bolts, or L bolts, with two shackles. They're rated for 160 kilograms each. So I've slung one underneath the A-arm, one underneath the buffer there. I've got a jack under there, that's more just so things don't ping out and hurt me, but there's not much tension in that. Essentially just winding these round with a monkey wrench on each side. One on that side, one on that side. I probably, if I was doing this again, would slide this right up just so that we've not got any bend in that end, so as close as you can, kind of on the plumb line along the bottom end of that A-bar. And we're almost there, we're getting there. Certainly it's been a lot easier than having to try and manhandle it. It's just impossible to get that spring in because there's no weight pushing it down. I did get some spring compressors just from local auto store, but they are actually too large. The bolts would have fouled on the top and the bottom of the suspension work there. You might be able to get some smaller coil compressors, but that was all they had in stock. These are shorter coils than most regular cars, so that would obviously have a strut in the middle as well. So if anyone's struggling with this problem, that's one way to get around it. There's probably other ways you could jerry rig it, but these are just a couple of galvanised shackles from a local DIY store, and they seem to be doing the job. All being well, I'll have this side finished later today, and then we can move on to the other side, but obviously that's all got to get cleaned up first, but we're getting there. Not much has changed in this side. The gearbox has been cleaned up a little bit, but I haven't torn it down yet, or haven't sent it away to get checked and rebuilt. I'm actually now speaking to some experts on the topic, swithering about actually looking for a 5-speed, because I think that the 5th gear makes things so much smoother and sweeter. So that's one for me to dwell on, because obviously that's going to be more money. Just spraying up the just little jobs, just kind of knocking them off when I've got the time that I can't use power tools at night and things like that, coming in here and cleaning things up and spraying them. For the steering rack, I've still got the old gaiters on here. I've got new tie rod ends and I've got new sort of rubber booting, so I'm going to have to clean all that up and spruce that up, put the new rubber boots on and the new tie rod ends before I can fit back the steering rack. The rest of the project is pretty much unchanged. There's the new brake lines. I've just been playing with the electrics and checking that bulbs work and things. The clutch for the master cylinder one is here. That's the original join in there, the sort of banjo bolt, whatever you call it. This is a new hose to go to the clutch. There's new hoses for the brakes. The other problem I had was that I thought I was smooth sailing and I was going to be able to fit the master cylinder in as the dual master cylinder. Actually, when I looked at it and I got a rebuild kit, I realised that the pistons were seized within these bores round the front here, and so there was no way I could get them out. And so what I've actually done is weld on a bolt and a nut to the end of the piston, and then I've used just a wrench, or you can use anything I suppose that opens wide enough, gripped it round and used it as a slap hammer. So I've just pulled up on it repeatedly, and you need to be fairly careful with this because what pours out is horrible black, disgusting brake fluid and clutch fluid. So this is I'm going to obviously have to break that off now. I think what I'll end up doing here is, because I've got new rubbers to fit for the rebuild and washers and so on. I do have new springs, however. What I think I'll do is actually get this honed and re-sleeved with stainless steel, because of this is steel, and the brake fluid having a sort of absorbing water, or at least having a bit of water consistency. It'll end up corroding and rusting, and you're apparently supposed to change that fluid once a year anyway, your brake fluid. So I think it may well be that I have to get a new piston machined, get these bored and sleeved, and then I can actually rebuild the whole kit. So what I thought was a done deal turns out to be a little bit more work ahead of me, but we're progressing. The bodywork, I'm just really getting some more advice on this, and even looking to get some quotes to do some of it. I'm going to do a little bit myself, but I'm going to probably need someone with a little bit more skills in welding than me to do some of the more cosmetic stuff, as I've stated before. What I have done, however, and has now arrived, still in its box, is it was expensive as hell to ship here because it came from the States, but I've actually got A pillars and B pillars and sills all ready assembled together, which you can't, or at least I couldn't find in Australia, being ready together. So although that was expensive for shipping, I think that will pay off in savings of labour when I actually have to sort of marry it all together and pull things apart. I'm going to have to put in a lot more bracing. The car is folding back on itself and wanting to pull itself in two, and so really I re-welded this brace here, but obviously that's not very sensible in retrospect, because that's going to have to come out, that A pillar B pillar sill. So the car wants to fall apart into two bits, and so I'm going to have to really brace that up, and I think put it back on the chassis fairly soon, just so it's all square, and then I can actually use that as a datum for starting my measurements and starting the welding. So that's progress as it stands. All my small parts are still over there in their boxes, the carburetor over there. There's a few more things that still need to be cleaned up, but I'm gradually getting to the end of the mucky part. I've got to the fuel line I'm going to replace, but that's still filthy. Everything else has been tested, like the wiper motor and things is sitting there in its box, but it's all working. Flywheel doesn't look too bad. I don't know if I've mentioned it in previous videos, but sorry to jump around the place. And what I've come across, because of the way the starter motor meshes in like in a sort of interference fit, is that I've actually got, I don't know how well the camera shows this, but each of these teeth has really been worn away and is looking a little bit worse for wear. But whether or not I can get away with filing that off, or whether the whole thing needs to be pulled off, we'll need to see. As it stands, because the flywheel is on here, my engine mount, actually I need more of a spacer between the back of the engine and the engine mount, because I can't actually turn this over just now, so it's binding with the flywheel there. So the engine has been lightly gone over with degreaser. I haven't taken anything apart yet for the engine. I'm waiting to get that job done once the body goes away, or once I have a bit more garage room. I do have some parts, however, for doing the rebuild. Some new goodies came through the post. Not too expensive, luckily, this box. New head gasket when I get to do the engine rebuild, makes sense. I've got a few other grommets and bits and bobs in there. There's the rebuild kit for the master cylinder. I did, however, stupidly order, well, not order twice, because I ordered from two separate companies, a handbrake assembly. If anyone is looking for one, drop me a line. I'm sure I'll be able to give it to you for cheaper than you buy it from. In fact, if anyone wants it, I can give it away. But that's the progress as it stands. We've got a nicely powder coated rolling chassis that just needs to be mated up to the gearbox if and when I decide to refit that, and then I think the body goes on and the metal work starts, and the body work starts. But it's looking good. The front rebuild, all the brakes, master cylinders, new pads. The drums got skimmed on a lathe, so I took that to a specialist shop and they actually sort of got rid of all the rusty stuff on the inside, so that's all nice and smooth as well now. So all brakes and all suspension, brand new rebuilt polyurethane bushings front and back. The A-arms and the actual metalwork is original. It's just got blasted and cleaned up, but the springs are new hoses, new brake lines, new bump stops, which the bump stops actually will be compressed on that rubber until the engine is in and everything kind of settles down, and then hopefully that suspension will lift and release that pressure. But we're over a year in now, so it's not flying ahead, this project. But again, I'm slow and steady, trying doing a little job every night, knock something off, phone someone, email someone. I've got a list of useful contacts now that I've made, and a lot of people texting me and emailing me via the YouTube channel, so thanks everyone. I'll try and get back to you when you write a comment to me. That's it for now.